We have this one circled as a possible fight of the night. You have Juicy J, Julian Erosa, not featuring on Katy Perry songs and his own rap albums, taking on Nate the Train Landwehr. And Matt, for both these guys, interesting pass to the UFC. For Juicy J, he's kind of like Glenn Big Baby Davis. We're going to do a little bit with the Celtics. We're going to end up in, the Southwest. And then all of a sudden, in our neck of the woods, in St. John, New Brunswick, Canada, for Juicy J, 3 different stints with the UFC, overall total record of 2-4. And while you might think that is full of salt, you're right. He won his last fight against Sean Woodson by outlasting Sean Woodson. I mean, Woodson, classic boxer, really, really thin legs, and Juicy J just kept cracking at those legs. We're just going to keep chopping the tree, and then eventually end up with a pretty neat submission, earning himself a performance of the night with the Darce choke in that one. He was a plus 350 to a plus 400 underdog in that fight. We had Woodson. A lot of people had Woodson. It was a great win for Juicy J. And if you look at his last 5 fights, even the losses are against good fighters. I mean, Devontae Smith, Grant Dawson, and then Julio Arce. I mean, I'm probably the biggest Julio Arce fan in the world. Great fighter. So you end up with Erosa outside of the UFC. He beats AJ Bryant. Isn't that a WWE guy? I think it is. Correct me in the comments. For Nate Landwehr, went on a huge win streak, former M1 global champ. He was doing great things over there. Listen, was he ever going to fight Movsar Evloev? I know they were 2 different weight classes, but they always seemed to be on the same card. It was Evloev, Landwehr, M1 champs. And then he comes over to the UFC and he takes on one of the Burns brothers. And it's not the Burns brother that just lost the welterweight title. It's the other Burns brother, Herbert. And he gets finished emphatically in that one. And then Nate Landwehr comes back with his classic, I just cut my hair in my basement haircut, and he fights Darren Elkins in a fight between old Darren Elkins and a guy that fights like a young Darren Elkins. And it was amazing. But of course, Darren Elkins, just like Nate Diaz in 2019, his face will evade him, and it just started to fill up. It started to blow up, and the cuts really caused an issue for Darren Elkins in that one. I mean, it was kind of a gruesome look for him. But Elkins stayed in that fight. Even into the 3rd round, he was going at it with Nate Landwehr. Landwehr's a showy guy. I mean, he's like Patrick Roy when he wanted to leave Montreal. He'll put his hands way up in the air, trade me. He'll kind of put his hands behind his back. He'll do a lot of herky-jerky weird stuff, which could definitely get him in trouble against a lot of different strikers. Matt, we love this fight. Why do you love this fight?
This is a really fun fight because Nate Landwehr is going to bring the fight to Julian Erosa. And for Erosa, listen, the one problem that he does have, and yes, he's only lost 2 fairly good fighters, he doesn't deal with range very well. He is one of those guys, listen, he's 6'1", but he weighs 145 pounds. It is absolutely absurd how he weighs in at 145. And he does have sort of that Max Holloway kind of body type. The difference is he doesn't deal with those pressure fighters all that well. He can get pinned up against the cage. He does have a certain strength disadvantage in this weight class. And against a guy like Nate Landwehr, we do talk about the excitement that his fights bring, but also Nate Landwehr, if he wants to, since he does have decent wrestling, can make this a boring fight and hold Erosa up against the cage. Now, I'm not going to predict this is a boring fight by any means because I really do think this is going to be one of the more exciting fights of the night. But Landwehr and the pressure that he brings is going to force Julian Erosa to either A, start throwing a boatload of knees up the middle, or do what we see a lot of guys do when they get the back up against the cage, shoot for his own takedowns. And that's really what's interesting about this fight. Both guys, yes, they've had their losses here and there, but both guys are good on the ground, on the feet, and in the clinch. And they're going to offer the other guy a lot of different looks and wrinkles. For Erosa, he does have that really nice Darce choke and really just head and arm chokes from any position. Because we talk about the disadvantages of being that tall, thin frame. There are some advantages as well. And for those head and arm chokes, when you're built like Erosa, you can just get those angles no matter where. And if we do see, let's say Nate Landwehr is doing really well. He's pressuring Erosa, and then he gets clipped by a big shot, and he does shoot for one of those panic takedowns against the cage. We've seen it 1,000 times before. Julian Erosa's guillotine, his Darce choke, his anaconda can really threaten anyone at this weight class. And I do think when you look at the record of Erosa, it doesn't really give him as much credit as it should. Listen, he's been in the UFC 3 times, and you're probably thinking, well, you've got to be pretty bad to get cut from the UFC 2 times and then be brought back. But no, he only has fought a really high level of competition, and he always brings out the best in his opponent. Yes, Devontae Smith beat him really, really fast, but other than that isolated fight, they are normally very competitive fights throughout, and I think this would be extremely exciting. For Nate Landwehr, though, I think his output could get him in trouble in this fight. We do see him just throw, and at some point, Julian Erosa is great at outlasting his opponents, and I do fear a little bit for Landwehr that if he is throwing that crazy amount of volume that we know him for, could he just tire himself out, and then could Erosa kind of bring it back in that third round?
And I mean, for Julian Erosa too, you talk about the level of competition, even outside of the Ultimate Fighter Season 22, where he got knocked out in the first round by Artem Lobov, holy smokes. You were fighting decent level of competition. I know even on that season, a win over Jason Soares, who the UFC did not want to sign in that episode of Looking for a Fight, where he had Rafael Alves, that's earlier on this card. He had a win over Mehdi Baghdad, you know, All-Stars MMA's own, and a win over Abner Lavares by split decision. But you look at it after that, a win over Marcin Rotzek in the finale, former KSW champ at 45. He lost to Teruto Ishihara, a little bit late in Ishihara's career, if you ask me. But lost to Teruto, that'll happen. I guess at the time, 7-2-2. Win over Austin Springer, that you know and love. I mean, he fought on Contender Series in the UFC, lost to Paddy Pimblett, and the story goes on. He punched his second ticket to the UFC with a win over Jamall Emmers on Contender Series. And if you look at Nate Landwehr, again, it might not be a lot of names that the MMA fan might know over in North America, but I mean, Victor Klesnik, big decision win there. Andrei Leshnev, the fight that he had at M1 Challenge 95 against Hamzat Dalgiev, that was the one that really got me on the Nate Landwehr train because, of course, like I said earlier, you had Movsar Evloev on that card, but Nate Landwehr picked up a big win. That was Battle of the Mountains, Battle of the Mountains 7, and really awkward scene when Nate Landwehr won that fight because it was like, no, he wasn't supposed to win that fight, but he did. You look at the losses, I mean, listen, it's regional scene losses 5 years ago plus. So Nate Landwehr, he's won good fights. He's a pressure fighter. He has good wrestling in his back pocket. For Juicy J, good leg kicks, good striking. He has at times left his hands low, and he's made himself susceptible to power shots, and so you could definitely see a path to victory for Nate Landwehr that way. We did see it from Juicy J the last time out against Sean Woodson. He did tend to keep his hands up a little bit higher, and you usually see fighters when they tire, the hands start to come down a little bit, but Julian Erosa kept them up. So in this fight, it'll be interesting to see which version of these two guys we get. Are we going to get the crazy Nate Landwehr that's out there for blood? Are we going to get the Juicy J that leaves his hands down? It's an interesting one. So if we have a look at the odds, Matt, again, Julian Erosa opened a plus 131. He's now at a minus 115. Nate Landwehr opened a minus 159 on best fight odds. Now at a minus 108. So the odds have reversed themselves. Over on Topology, you have a pretty decent sample size so far. 778 total votes. 75% Landwehr. 52% by decision. 41% by knockout. So the odds are telling a different story. People are putting their money on Julian Erosa. The fans, on the other hand, are voting with Nate Landwehr. What do you think about that?
So I'm going to side with the former betting favorite and the current fan favorite, if you will, in Nate Landwehr. Again, I do like the wrestling from Landwehr, and I do think he's at least well-versed enough on the ground to not get caught by anything from Julian Erosa. And for Landwehr, too, we talked about the hands of Erosa. The one thing he is guilty of, when he does think a takedown attempt's coming, he will drop his hands looking for a submission. And if Landwehr does, if he will be able to do kind of that classic Chad Mendes, fake the takedown, come up high for a big shot. Not that Landwehr has insane amounts of power and he's going to put Erosa down with one big shot, but just something to look out for as the fight does progress. I like Landwehr in this fight, but I will admit this is an absolute toss-up.
It's really weird how Nate Landwehr beat Darren Elkins. That seems like only yesterday he was a top-ranked fighter. You beat Darren Elkins, and then you fight Julian Erosa. To me, it's almost going backwards. And for Erosa, he picked up that big win over Sean Woodson his last time out. Nate Landwehr, probably the perfect opponent, I would think. I mean, really, it's not too much of a stretch. You were a big underdog, almost like Shana Dobson, where she had the win over Agapova. And now you get a debuting fighter in Casey O'Neill. For Juicy J, he's been around the block. He gets this fight with Nate Landwehr. I will side, however, with Julian Erosa in this fight due to the fact that I like the availability of the submissions for him against a wrestler. I like his striking in this fight. I like that low kick. And if you look at Nate Landwehr, he tends to chase his opponents a lot. I mean, and again, he can because his wrestling's so good, but I do like Erosa and especially the staying power. Now, if Landwehr gets a finish, it's either really early or really late.
I would agree.
But I like Julian Erosa in this fight. So we'll differ on the picks. I'm going with Erosa. You're going with Nate Landwehr. Let us know which one of the two is crazy. I'm sure if you're Topology voter, I can already guess. But yeah, let us know what you're thinking about this fight. It should be a great one. And we got a great card coming up, of course, on your main card. Your co-main event, Ketlin Vieira taking on Yana Kunitskaya. And in your main event, Curtis Blaydes taking on Derek Lewis. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, man, as we always say.
Let's get into it.